beautiful souls. I hope you're well. Today, I have a wonderful gentleman with me today. Zhu, you are a person who I've had the pleasure and honor to meet on the galactic groups, which are groups that I've mentioned previously in previous interviews, groups of people who have similar interests into spirituality, into galactic things, and all the things that are happening in the world right now, which are quite intense. And Zhu is a beautiful soul, beautiful person who is very creative. He's originally from Singapore, but is now living in North America. Zhu is a writer, he's an illustrator, and he's also the editor of the Corridor Realms comic graphic novels. So that's going to be really interesting to know more about this. And he's, as he said, sometimes he will be writing songs as well. So I don't know if you would like to talk about that a little bit more. So, but without further ado, Zhu, I want to welcome you into the channel. It's a real honor and pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Abigaëlle. It's a real honor to be here. I'm a fan of your channel, as you know, and I'm grateful to be here and happy.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell us a little bit, just to introduce yourself a little bit more, or tell us a little bit more about your creative endeavors and work?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I've basically been working on making comics for pretty much all my life, really. Like when I was a kid, I would just write and draw them and kind of like on like any piece of paper I could find and just kind of like staple them
it's the original version of your binded lines.
I've had a lifelong passion for comics, and it's and what I've always loved about the comics medium is there's something very primal about it, about telling a story with words and pictures. It's a very old human tradition, from cave paintings, hieroglyphs, and I mean it's how we basically have records of our heritage. The history of the true history of how we came to be on this planet. So and I feel the special thing about comics is that it's when you're reading a comic or making a comic, it requires a kind of a synthesis of left brain and right brain, the logical and the intuitive mind, because it's telling a story and using words and pictures, and it's and it's great fun too. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, of course, the pleasure is there. And like you say, it gives you the opportunity to work many facets of your being, your creative being, but also perhaps of your intuition. And I know you've also, you have probably a lot of things to say about intuition and how this is part of your work. So I don't know if you want to address that a little bit as well.
So how I first got into comics was when I was like 5-6 years old. I was introduced to the Super Friends cartoon.
Okay.
And the Superman character really grabbed my attention, and what I always loved about the character was that, without realizing it, without ever knowing the term starseed, Superman is basically the embodiment of the starseed.
Absolutely.
You know, he's from another planet. He's but Earth is like his adopted home, and his mission in life is to help humanity. You know,
the perfect definition of what a starseed is or should be.
Yeah.
Definitely, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I feel like I was intuitively drawn to that, even though I've never had conscious memories of life on other planets or any contact experiences, and so yeah, it's been a real journey to get this point. I only heard the term starseed for the first time. I think it was like 2020, when a lot of, you know, basically the world kind of shut down, and you know, we're all trying to figure out what's going on, and I was just going down one rabbit hole after another, and that, you know, I ended up, you know, I think I saw the term, someone using the term starseed in like probably like a tweet or something, and I looked it up, and I was like, oh, interesting, yeah. And that's I feel like it was just intuition, just going from here to there, and when I think that the first definition I came across was one that didn't particularly resonate with me, like you know, where the description of a starseed was basically like someone who was incarnating on Earth for the first time, and there are a lot of people, you know, like that, but I never felt like that was me, you know, like, and a lot of the ones who are incarnating on Earth for the first time, they would have they would have memories of, you know, I feel like they're generally more aware of being from the stars, and actually having had experiences meeting ETs, and memories of their past lives on other planets. And so I think it was around fall of 2021 where I've you know, I feel like I was kind of being guided, like prompted, like like, no, you are a starseed, you know, like I was kind of asking the question, you know, like, well, in meditation, you know, like, and it was kind of around the time where the Intergalactic Confederation entered the star system, fall of 2021. Yeah, I feel like, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who had that. You know, I feel like I was being activated, and so I just started looking more into what actually being a starseed means, and I feel like it on a very basic level, it just means someone who's had previous incarnations not on Earth.
Yeah.
And so I then stumbled upon Julia Balazs, her galactic astrology chart. So there's a website, for those who don't know, it's I believe the URL is like galacticastrochart.com, where you can basically generate a chart based on your year of birth and the time that you were born, and it basically like maps out what's like your soul history in this galaxy. And I understand that these aren't meant to be absolute truths. They're more like right. It's more like a guide.
Yeah.
And looking at my own chart and my alignments with planets like Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, it indicated that my soul origin was not in this galaxy.
Okay.
That was the most interesting thing about it. And then I think it was a few months later that Elena Danan's this book, the Seeders, came out, and she basically listed the 24 Seeder races.
Yeah.
And I was looking at and one particular race stood out for me, which was the Elathians. They're like, I think she had a drawing of a winged a lady with wings,
like a bit angel,
and a glow, right, and a glowing sword, and what she wrote about the Elathians was that they were basically a race who were often mistaken for angels, and like if I may share the screen.
Go for it. Which is your art.
Yeah. So this is a character I created for the first comic that I did, which was back in the mid 2000s.
Okay.
Called Twilight Lady. About an ancient soul who had experienced several lifetimes as where she was known as a goddess of justice,
okay,
and vengeance. And what I discovered as I was writing the story was there's a Greek goddess, Nemesis, who was known as just that. And so and as we know, a lot of these gods and goddesses were based on ET races.
Yeah.
And whether there was actually a one being that was that inspired the idea of nemesis, we don't know. That it could have been like a composite of beings. But I just found it very interesting, that I was drawn to this, particular ET race, and it all kind of lines up with my galactic astrology chart, and like when I wrote this character, and she who doesn't have a name, by the way. She's
okay.
In the story, she's known as she had chosen not to ever have a name.
Okay.
Because she considered names to be traps. And as I was writing, this being like her dialogue, her personality, everything, I just felt like on some level, this is me,
Yeah, it was resonating on the soul level.
No, I think I was writing. I mean, I was writing. It was coming from me. It wasn't like, it wasn't like, I'm writing about this other person. I was projecting myself into this character.
Yeah.
And so that was suddenly illuminating.
Yeah, the corroboration is really, really interesting, because did you actually create that character after or before you actually saw the Cedars depiction by Elena?
Oh, it was way before. It was okay. I think 2002, 2003.
Really interesting.
20 years ago. I came up with and wrote that comic about 20 years ago.
Okay. So that's really interesting. Tell me, I know you're I think what I gathered from what you have said in the past is that you're trying in your art, in your creative endeavor through these novels or comic novels, to bring elements of reality and into what is supposed to be, fiction or whatever, but you're bringing a lot of what is happening in some ways on a metaphorical way, what's happening in the world and how, things are not what they seem and things like that. Would you like to talk about it a little bit more? Because I think it's interesting. It's a very creative and unique way of disclosing, in a way, which I find very interesting on your part.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been I guess I would say awake more or less for over 20 years now. Because it was I feel it was in the early 2000s when I first came upon a book in the library. It was The Biggest Secret by David Icke. And I was just kind of browsing through it, and I came upon a chapter where he was talking about the Anunnaki and how the Old Testament Bible was originally talking about gods in the plural sense, and how it was then translated into a singular God. And how originally, the material from the Bible Old Testament was originally from the Sumerian tablets. And this first time I'd ever come across anything like that, and it was just so interesting. And it resonated. Like I just immediately knew that this is the truth, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so from there, when I first began doing comics, I wanted to kind of see. I feel like the way a lot of truthers operated, it's kind of it's a very masculine approach. You know, this is the truth. Here's the red pill. Now chew and swallow it. You know, which
It's a bit aggressive or a bit intense.
Right, right, and you know, that's of course it's a necessary approach in some ways.
Yeah.
But that's never been me.
Yeah.
And I feel like and there's room for all kinds of approaches. So my approach is more like I like to have a balance, that masculine approach with a more feminine aspect, you know, like like a more gentle form of disclosure. So and that's what I've been doing essentially in my work. Just putting in here and there truths, like you know, things like astral projection, which was a big thing about the Twilight Lady comic. And so like the concept initially of the comic was that the character of the nameless lady was she's incarnated on Earth in the form of a young woman named Jen, who has no knowledge at all of who she really is.
Okay.
And it's only when she's asleep that the lady emerges, and then she goes off on and does battle with dark forces on the astral plane.
Yeah.
So and I know that there are people who have had experiences like that, actual memories of doing that, and it was kind of my way of exploring the idea of interdimensionality, multiple planes of existence, alongside the 3D reality. So that was the concept of Twilight Lady, essentially.
It's very interesting
that I explored. Yeah,
because like you say, I mean, we have seen a lot of people who actually mention now or have shared their experiences of at night, especially Starseed, perhaps not just Starseed. We should try not to have labels too much on people, but you know, many people who have a feeling of being from elsewhere often have this multi-dimensional aspect, and they will often wake up in the morning completely exhausted from actual night work, where they're actually doing things on another plane, and often they are battling some form of negative energy or nefarious or regressive energy. So I mean, it's true disclosure in a way. So it's beautiful how you did it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I actually, when I first wrote Twilight Lady, I actually had no idea about like that this kind of stuff happened to actually people. And it was later on, you know, right, that I found out about all this, you know, and it also made me wonder if I was having these experiences, but having no memory of them.
Which is possible. I mean, many of us have things that we don't have memories of, so it could be. It could be.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I know you have there's two other graphic novels that you have created, either as a writer or participating in the illustrations. Would you like to tell us more about these other beautiful creations you have participated in?
Sure. Well, I guess I'll talk about what I'm currently working on. Which is this.
Lyra.
So this is it's called Lyra Nebula, and it's going to be the first time I'm actually drawing a comic by hand as well as writing it. With Twilight Lady, what it was more digital artwork with like 3D software and Photoshop and things like that. So this is something which I'm going to be coloring and drawing by hand. And what it's about is the Lyra Nebula there's a portal which is there actually is one. But in this comic it's what happens is that there's there are like ships that accidentally go through this portal and end up in on an asteroid planet. That's inhabited only by an indigenous race. This little guy here, I don't know if you can see him. He's part of the indigenous race on this planet. And what happens is it's these other races end up trapped on this planet, and they're most of them are more evolved races than these indigenous ones. And what happens is there's a lot of kind of it's kind of like a Wild West, like a chaotic Wild West, where you have
a galactic Wild West.
where you have these ETs who are more advanced, and you have these indigenous race which is less evolved, and so you some of these more advanced ETs, they try to take advantage of the little guys and but they're benevolent ones too, who are trying to help them and help them kind of guide them to help their evolution, basically.
Which basically very much resonates with this similar situation on Terra, on Earth presently, with what has happened with our nefarious but also positive ETs that have been interfering with us. So again, a beautiful self-disclosure there.
Our history, yes. Yes. So this feline being here, he's kind of the main character. Okay. He crashes, like in the beginning of the story, he crashes on the planet, and this actually takes place in the time of the Lyran Wars.
Okay.
So he's someone who has been fighting in the Lyran Wars, and he ends up here, and this green guy here has already been there for some time, and he's actually from the Orion Wars. So it's like he kind of ended up going through the portal and from the future and ended up here. So what you're gonna have is like kind of like a meeting of ET races from like different timelines.
Cool.
You know, there are even gonna be some who are from the future, and so it's gonna be interesting. Definitely. Seeing how they interact and everything, and I wouldn't say I have like the whole storyline mapped out or figured out. You know, I've always been someone who writes to explore. So, you know, it's and this is a concept drawing that I did of one of the more benevolent evolved races who so this one's from like a higher density, but he also ends up being trapped on this planet, and he forms a council to kind of try to, you know, oversee and bring order to this kind of chaotic Wild West type.
He sounds a little bit familiar to me. I don't know. It reminds me, in my own perception, it reminds me of it with the blue skin and the bald head. It reminds me a little bit of like Andromeda kind of thing going on there. And Andromedans was an A. It's interesting, but he's more hairy though, so it's interesting because it's a beautiful mix of things.
Yeah, and the intuitive session that I received from you, where you talked about my. The question I asked you was what was my last incarnation before I incarnated as a human on Earth, and the answer you got was as an A. So I thought that was really interesting, and I had made this drawing months ago.
And your session was quite recent, so that's interesting.
Yes,
definitely interesting.
Yes.
Wow. I'm glad it resonated there, and that there was some correlation there.
Definite synchronicity there.
But I mean, we're so, not only are we multidimensional, but you know, like you say, we've been in different spheres, in different you know, as different life forms through the journey, through, you know, like your star chart tells, you know, we've been so many things that sometimes, you know, I get in those CIT sessions, I get an image of a particular, like a vision of a particular race of Star Nation, but you know, people, that doesn't mean it's the people's matrix. Actually, maybe it's just like you say, a past incarnation or a recent one, or so. We never know. We see these things, and you know, If it
Yeah.
resonated with you, then good.
Oh yeah. I mean, I look at all these things as possibilities,
Yeah.
intriguing possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is
And,
important is what resonates with your heart.
oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting because if I may mention, I don't normally speak about other people's sessions online, but because since you're bringing it up, you mentioned this question of balancing the feminine and the sacred and the masculine energy. I found was really interesting because you mentioned that earlier in this interview when you were talking about the question of bringing a disclosure that's really trying to balance these two aspects and not be like too too aggressive or too in the masculine energy, and that's something that really resonated as well. So I thought that was interesting as well, the corroboration there.
Yeah, that was something else that really resonated with me. And yeah, it's and I feel that's what like creativity, all creative pursuits require a balance of masculine and feminine aspects.
Because it reconciliates the two sides of the brain as well. So it's kind of metaphorically, it's that as well. So.
Yeah. And especially in these times, I feel like that's very important. I remember Elena mentioning in a recent webinar about there was a question about how do we raise the level of gamma
waves,
right? And she was saying if you can get the two hemispheres of the brain to be in sync, that's one way. And I feel like when we're engaged in something creative, something we're passionate about doing, when we reach that state of bliss where it just feels like play, it's not work. It doesn't feel like work, and I'm always looking to do that, when it starts feeling like work, like, oh, like I don't feel like it. I just I then that's my cue for like a reset. I need to take some time off, or I need to figure out, why did I start doing this, and like what was it that I
intended, or
right, that drew me in the first place. And and it's all about like getting back to feeling that state of bliss, and just being in that as much as possible, and just creating and having fun.
I think what you say is very important, because when we lose the spirit of the, not the spirit, but the I'm trying to find the right expression in English, when we lose the vibe of the joyful child that plays and creates, when we kind of lose that vibe, like you say, it's time to just take a vacation or take a time off. And I have the same thing as well in my creative endeavors, is that I will have moments when suddenly it feels like work, and I'm like, oh, I have to take some time off, or just maybe sometimes just a few hours or a few days, and then you come back to it, and then you have the vibe of you're filled with that bliss, and you're filled with that joy. And I think that probably it applies as well to all people who are doing like energetic work or things like that, because you're bringing a lot, you're transmitting, a lot as well. It's not just the fact that you might get tired or a bit, like it's kind of the same thing every day. It's also that it can be very energetically intense, transmitting, being a transmitter of these informations unconsciously. So perhaps sometimes it can and also be the reason why we need a little bit of a break or something like that. So
and the what kind of drew me into this current project was I when I'm collaborating with someone that has its appeal, but it for a while there I was doing purely writing, and someone else would do the artwork, and I just found like just working on scripts, after a while it gets a little bit I was reaching a kind of a point where I just wanted to the kind of like instead of like finishing a script and then waiting for someone else to do the artwork. I wanted that flow back that I had with Twilight Lady, where I would just be working on page after page, and I could work on the art when I wanted to, when I work on the writing when I wanted to, and just having that freedom.
I'm sorry, I'm sharing here on the screen your actual the website to Corridor Comics, which again you're the editor of. You have had a few projects. You mentioned Twilight Lady that we see here, which is something you have not only written but also illustrated, right? Am I wrong?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And then there's these other projects. Would you like to tell a bit more about these other projects, such as Subhuman Sanctum and Vine, and tell us more about what was your role in that and what are the stories about?
Sure. So Subhuman Sanctum is essentially about alien human hybrids, and basically the premise. This was. I think back in I created this back in I think 2013, 2012, 2013, around that. Okay. And it's the basic premise is there are two ET races that are kind of operating in secret on Earth. And one of them is kind of like benevolent, wise ET race, and they're like telepathic in nature. They're very much they operate like as a like a mental collective. Okay. And they're trying to guide humanity and raise the frequency of the planet. And there's another race who are regressive and kind of operate underground. And they're trying to bring down the vibe of the planet because it suits their motives.
Again, very beautiful disclosure here of the reality on Earth. It's almost no fiction there, huh?
I think I was onto something there.
Yeah.
And honestly, I knew about the reptilians thanks to reading David Icke, but I honestly had no conscious knowledge of the Andromedan Council, and such.
The high frequency.
Yeah, I had never heard of Alex Collier at the time,
Yeah.
it's only in recent years that I've been going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And when I did, I was like, wow, like
there's so much in there that it takes years to kind of process all this.
yeah. And I remember in an article I wrote on um on my blog from
Yep.
years ago, reality versus fantasy. It's where I spoke about how the fantasy world of corridor realms eventually I felt that it was going to, like, the reality was going to start resembling the fantasy. So on some level, I feel like I've always known that was where this 3D matrix was headed. Into a more wide, like a reality of much more possibilities. Greater possibilities. So yeah.
So that's your blog as well. And then if I go back to what you had here on the main page, you have also the project Vine. Would you like to share a little bit about that project as well, and what part you've played in that beautiful project?
Yes. Well, there was another one, like Subhuman Sanctum. I on Vine, I worked with an artist, a very talented artist from Turkey. His name's Coşkun Kuzgun, and Vine is basically a story about a journey to inner Earth, which is called, in this story it's called Subrealm. But and it was it's basically it starts off with the discovery of a kid of around like a teenager who's been asleep in a bed of vine for about, I think it was 5 years or so, during which time his consciousness has been in the vine, and part of a kind of shared consciousness, and he, this the beginning of this is a little dark, but
it's okay. I mean, we have to embrace all the aspects, of our shadow as well. It's part of
oh yeah. And so what happens with in this story is that there's a village in a very remote island that's being terrorized by these creatures who are basically like giant bugs, and these bugs are abducting children and bringing them into a place called the subrealm, and where they're being taken to a giant tree, which is he's an actual sentient being.
Okay.
And so like there are several characters, but basically what happens is the good guys in the story end up going on a journey into inner Earth, and to do a rescue operation, essentially.
It's interesting because I'm sorry to cut you in the middle, but it reminds me a little bit of the story that was told by the Singaporean, again, super soldier, Stephen Chow. That was interesting. I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you there, but it's very similar to what happened, when he was helping in missions to help young children who were trapped in these southeastern jungle forests, which were had like some malevolent reptilians. So anyway, so again, very visionary, again, your stories there.
And one very interesting bit of synchronicity, there's in this story, there's something called a vine tunnel, which basically exists as a portal to the inner Earth.
Okay.
And recently there was an article, I think it was in the Daily Mail or something, about a sinkhole that was discovered in China, where a large sinkhole where there you find these really tall trees and all kinds of shrubbery, and it really sounded like it was some kind of like gateway to, or it could be some kind of gateway to inner Earth.
Wow.
I shared that story on that article on Michael Sala's Telegram.
Interesting.
Because I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, how your intuition is just, let's call it things the way they are. This intuition is your creativity is intuition, and your intuition is perceiving what's out there, somehow. I remember when I was I had QHHT sessions, and every time I was doing the QHHT session, the lady was telling me, I was saying to the lady, "Oh, I'm making this up because I'm a creator. I have too much imagination. I can write books and things." And she kept saying me, "Well, don't you know that imagination is vision? It is intuition, and it is happening somewhere on some realm, on some dimensional aspect, on some facet of time and space." And so creators are visionaries in a way. And it's not like, pompous and putting ourselves on a pedestal. It's just people who are very creative are indeed very intuitive. And I really feel that from your perception and your art, how you, not only in your writing, but in the illustration, how you really captured this. It's very fascinating.
Yeah. And I want to have conscious memory of my past lives and things like that, and meet my soul family, and but it's almost like I feel like there's a reason why those memories are blocked. And I feel like it's basically like this is the challenge for me. I'm being tested. We're all being tested. And this is my test, which is basically like I'm being invited to explore my subconscious through these stories, and it will almost be like if I were to find to recover everything, it would be like a spoiler, like
Absolutely.
like it's like getting all the answers before you do the quiz.
Absolutely. It's interesting what you
Yes.
say, because I have a feeling that sometimes perhaps people who are very creative might end up not having a lot of conscious memories coming back. And I have the same problem. I've had some images here and there in sessions and things, but a lot of it, like I'm not, and people are telling me, oh, I see ships and I see this and I see that. And I don't see this, I don't see these things. And I'm always wondering what's wrong with me, like, am I not connected enough or whatever? And then I'm thinking, well, but it's also because since I'm creative, my imagination already provides a lot of info, and then it's for me to trust it in the same way for you to trust it. So maybe we're not given so much evident, easy info, because in a way we really have all the tools within us as creators to unconsciously recover all this. So I think it's a positive thing. It's a positive, interesting way.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like if I had always known the things I know now, it would have very much, I think, interfered with my creative process. I wouldn't have come up with the things I came up with in that way. And I wouldn't have gone on the journey that I went on, and it really is all about the journey.
Absolutely. Not the destination, but always the journey. I totally agree with you. Very interesting. So we're getting closer to the end of this interview. Before we actually go into just for you to give us a last few words, I would just like to offer the opportunity to the viewers to discover your beautiful work. So I've shared, and I will share again here. If you, while I'm sharing this, if you want, you can, I will put the links under the video, but you can verbally name your this is your website. So on this website there is the different comics you've created in collaboration with other artists. So there's that, and you have also an Instagram account. Oops, sorry, it won't be long. Yeah, there we go. Corridor Comics on Insta. So that's interesting. Lots of beautiful visual parts of your work. So if people want to subscribe to that, it's really, really interesting visually. And I'll put the links under the video. Would you like to share with us a few words before we part, in terms of either regarding your creativity, your work, or just, words you'd like to share with the viewers in terms of your own experiences of what you feel about things? And
I just feel like it's in these times, where we're seeing so much destruction of outdated beliefs and institutions. There's never been a better time to really focus on creation, on creating this new reality that we all desire. And whether you're an artist or you're someone who makes whatever
any other types of endeavors, artistic.
And I feel like it's really all about following, like do it that thing that you've always wanted to do. There's really no better time to start doing it. and or continue or resume doing it. And I feel like that's how we're gonna raise our frequency and our consciousness. Like a lot of times we when we think of going within, and we always think of the breath of breathing, and I feel like there's something about the breath being a metaphor for consciousness, and I feel like what happens when air rises, it expands, and I feel like that's what happens when we raise our consciousness too. We expand our awareness, and I feel like it's all about that. That's how we're going to get out of whatever mess we're in.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the moment.
Yeah, very wise what you say, and I think this interesting metaphor of the breath, I really resonate too. It's very interesting what you say, and I think that I feel as well that each of us, as you say, has some sort of, I don't like the word mission, it's a little bit pompous, but we just have a purpose, something that makes our heart beat and gives joy to our heart, and also gives joy to others in that way. And your way is creating, and then creating, you do many things by creation. I mean, not only do you bring consciousness through a form of self-disclosure the way you do it, but you also bring a form of healing by exploring the light, by exploring the shadowy parts of ourselves, also through the characters. And that's important. People are always, there's a lot of people who are really about like very only light and only rainbows and only unicorns. And, in those comics, sometimes there is like more darker things, and that's okay, because this is part of our shadow, and it's part of the shadow work as well, to explore that and to transmute that. So I think you're doing an important shadow work in that way by creating this, but also giving the opportunity to other people to do their own shadow work and express things consciously or unconsciously through your work. So it's a form of healing. So you're a creator, but you're also in a way a healer in a way. Well, healer, to inspire healing, let's say.
And that's the thing about expanding our consciousness and awareness is you're actually accommodating light and dark. You're balancing light and dark. I think a lot of people equate good with light and dark with bad, whereas I see it more as good is I equate good with balance and bad with imbalance, where either you're being controlled by your shadow, or you're denying your shadow.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you. And like you mentioned earlier as well, not only the balance between shadow and light, but also the balance between feminine and masculine, between all of these elements to bring balance. And balance is really at the core of what is creative and what is manifesting good things. So I think you're doing a terrific job, a wonderful, beautiful work. Thank you for sharing with us some of your work today. Before we leave, I would like to ask you your next, your project you're working on right now, which has to do with the Lyran Nebula. Do you know when that's going to come out? Do you have an idea?
I want to get it out as soon as possible. Okay. It's kind of like a newborn baby. You want to nurture it, you want to protect it as much as possible, but I know at some point just gotta let it out into the world.
Let go of the perfectionism which we often have when we create things. And
it's something I intend to maybe in a month or so, by the end of September, perhaps. I will be putting it up on on my site.
On your website. Wonderful. And perhaps also in our galactic groups, we'll have the opportunity to see it. And so if people want to join these galactic groups, it's an opportunity to discover wonderful people such as you. So thank you so much, you, for sharing with us today. It was very fascinating to have your view on what's happening in the world, but with the perception of the creator and the artist and amazing creator that you are. Thank you for being all that you are and all that you do. It was a pleasure to have you on the channel.
Thank you. It was my pleasure, my honor and my pleasure to be.
And you will always be welcome if you want to come and perhaps present a new project or have a chat on different topics. You're always welcome. It will be a pleasure to have you. And thank you again for everything.
Thank you.
And take great care of yourself.
Take care of yourself too.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Hello, beautiful soul. You have been on a spiritual journey for some time, or perhaps you're just starting your inner journey. And you probably have questions that remain unanswered right now, although all your answers lie within yourself, as always. But sometimes we need someone to just give us a little nudge. And personally, as an intuitive and a transmitter and a creator, I have created my own type of approach where I offer the people the opportunity to ask a few questions, a maximum of 5 questions, where I will provide from my inner guidance, which is the fractal of source that I am and that you are as well as my high vibration guidance. Will provide a vocal transmission. And also we will be creating an artwork just for you, unique and original, based on your questions, and the motifs and the colors that will be chosen for the artwork will have in some ways some information about the answers to your question. And I will also use a piece of music that, either through the frequency of its melody, of its words, will also give you some clues as to what the answers to your questions might be. And I only serve as a nudge, as a pointer, in order for you to, after that, resonate or not with this information, and then you can pursue your own spiritual and inner journey, just having been just helped a little bit on the path. So if you're interested in a creative intuitive transmission session, which I call CIT, I invite you to follow the link that's below in the description of this video, and on my website, abigaëllerichard.com/CIT. And don't hesitate to ask for more information or just book a session. Have a lovely day. Bye.